Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to Counselor's Couch 101. I'm Jim Stump, which is something I haven't mentioned recently. I figured you'd probably get tired of me saying that. Um, Yesterday, I was talking with a friend after our meditation group, and she said to me, she said, "You have a wonderful sense of humor. You ought to share that with the people on your post because you don't seem to be doing that." And I said, "Well, I don't have much West by God humor, but who knows? Maybe we'll try it. We'll see what you think, all right, in the future." But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Um, I remember some time ago, everything's in the past. Remember, I don't talk about people that I'm currently talking with, except if I'm just mentioning a general idea or a situation that they may be going through without mentioning anything of a personal nature, right? Because these themes are universal to all of us. I think all of us go through all of these different experiences and emotional upheavals and good times as well. So, anyway, maybe I should start by saying once upon a time, not a bad way to go, actually. So, once upon a time, I was speaking with this lady, and it seemed all she could ever think to talk about was to share complaints about her husband. She was going on and on and on and on, right? And I kept thinking to myself, okay, do you want a divorce? No, she didn't want a divorce or anything. She just wanted to complain. And so finally I asked her, I said, you know, why don't you tell your husband about this? Why don't the two of you just sit down and talk, work some of this stuff out? And she said, I don't want to get back out there. I don't want to start dating again. I don't want to have to go through all that grief and misery, all that time and all that boring stuff and trying to beat guys off. I don't want to have to learn somebody all over again and remake my life. And she went on and on about all the disasters she didn't want to do. And I stopped her at one point. Finally, I said, I says, I don't get this. I asked you, why don't you sit down and talk to your husband about these issues? And you start describing divorce. You start talking about being single, as though if you were to say anything to your husband, you're going to have to break up your marriage, right? I said, what's the deal? How come you can't sit down and talk to him about the stuff that bothers you? And she got quiet, really quiet, and she said, I don't want to open Pandora's box. Pandora's box. I don't know if you folks remember that, but Pandora had a box in which she stored all the evils of the world. She trapped them in there so they couldn't get out. And if someone were to open Pandora's box, all these bad things would rush back out into the people, the population of the planet, and we'd have all this misery. She didn't want to open Pandora's box if she were to talk to her husband. So we're thinking this through, she and I. I'm saying, okay, what is in that box? What can be so devastating? What's so awful down there, right? I mean, it's very clear that you're unhappy. That much we all know. And I said, your husband has to know it too. He's not an idiot, right? And he's been married with you for 20 years. You two know each other. He has to know you're not happy. I don't think you can keep it from him. I said, what's down there? I said, do you have resentments? And she said, yeah, I've got a lot of resentments. Things that I tried to talk to him about in the past, and he just wouldn't hear it. He'd shut me down and say, moving along, I'm not going to deal with that. It's your problem. You live with it, sort of a thing. So she had a lot of resentments. I said, was there a lot of bad history? Uh, did the man, slip out the back door here and there? And she says, yeah, there was some of that too, in addition to the mix, right? And I said, well, what else? Does he treat you badly now? She said, well, not exactly. It's not that he treats me badly. It's rather that we sort of don't have a relationship. Once again, it's those two ships passing in the night. It's like we're roommates. Sometimes I can't even get him to acknowledge that I'm there. She said, I call out to him, hello, hello, anybody know I'm here? She said she would do that. And I said, okay, well, all this stuff can be talked about. It's not relationship ending, right? All these things are rather superficial. And I said to her, "What's really down there? What's at the bottom? What's the worst thing in that box that you don't want to let out?" Well, she was sort of not able to identify it. She could feel it, but she didn't have a name for it necessarily, right? She just had an emotion that she could just sort of describe. And I tried to help her out with some words. I said, "Is there depression? Yeah. Um, is there bad history? Yeah. Is there, you know, sort of emotional abuse in the sense that you're being ignored?" You said that. She said, "Yeah." I said, "Does he say bad things to you?" And she said, "Well, verbal abuse." And she said, "Well, not exactly, but kind of, sort of, yeah. He sort of like dismisses anything I have to say, any idea I have in my head, anything I want, anything that is important to me, anything that might be fun for me, something I might enjoy in life. He kind of dismisses all that." And I said, "Well, does all this stuff make you angry? Is that what's down there? Anger?" And she thought, and for me, I always have a problem with the word anger because it's not specific enough. A lot of people say they're angry when they have could be dozens of emotions wrapped up in that, and they don't know the words, they don't have the vocabulary, so they just say, they're angry. So I'm not really fond of that word. I really become more specific in our conversation. But I asked her, "Is there anger there?" And she said, "Yeah." And so we're going a little bit deeper into it and into it. And I hesitated, but I finally asked her, I said, "Is there rage in that box? Rage?" And finally, once again, when I ask questions like that, oftentimes people, they get hit by it. And it's like it's below the surface. It's something they don't want to acknowledge, something they don't want to feel. So they push it down, right? And when you hit them by identifying what the issue is, it can stun people. It's like, whoa, am I really doing that? But finally, because I knew her pretty well, we were pretty friendly. Not, no, friendly in a professional way. Calm down. That's part of the humor. Never mind. I asked her if there was rage, and she finally said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, yeah." She said, "I'm boiling over." She said, "I'm afraid if I start to talk, I'm going to kill him." Now, she didn't mean she was physically going to kill him. I think she meant she was going to try to emotionally destroy him because she was so angry. And it had all been boiling up. All these things that had been happening for a great number of years had been boiling up, and she was enraged, and she had no way to release it. And she was afraid of sitting down with her husband and opening up those issues because she said, "I'm not afraid of him. I'm afraid of what I would do." Yeah. When I saw the look in her eye, I was afraid of her too. So I'm not pushing, for work or anything, and I'm not trying to suggest anything, but I will say something that I believe is true. Sometimes in situations like this, it does help to have a counselor on board because the counselor can keep things from escalating too far into a really negative space. And the counselor can be held responsible for issues that come up. The counselor can bring it out into a conversation and identify it and help the two people recognize it and sort of cope with it, right? Now, when I suggested that to this lady with the Pandora's box, I could see on her face a concern that I had, discussed with many other people before her. And that is that if she did that, if she went to couples counseling and she revealed all the anger and rage that she had inside of her, that she knew then when she went home, she would have to live with it. I remember some ladies in the past telling me, if I do that, he's not going to do anything during the counseling session. He's not going to embarrass himself or make himself look bad. But when we get home, that's when it's going to come out. When I have no one to defend me, when there's no one else there, I know something's going to happen. And once again, I'm not saying that the husband was going to physically abuse her. That wasn't the issue. The issue was they were going to have that blow up of rage that this particular woman was afraid of and didn't want to get into. Um, she was thinking that if she opened the box and let out what she was thinking, she pretty much could guess what he would say in defense of himself, and she would be raging at that as well because she wouldn't have felt like she was being heard. I've said this many times, but it's really true. A lot of us don't feel like we're being heard in all sorts of situations, in relationships, in family, um, brothers, sisters, father, mother, cousins, whatever, and also at work, neighbors, all sorts of things. We feel like we're not being heard and understood. And she felt that if she started talking about this stuff and he started defending and not recognizing the truth of what she was saying, she was going to explode. She was going to vent her rage, and there was going to be a problem. Well, I granted her that there was that possibility, but there are methods to work around that. Once again, I'm referring once again to the couples counselor. Some of the rules that couples counselors lay down, they say if there's another person, a third person in this problem, say the husband has a girlfriend or the wife is talking to the neighbor or something, the counselor says, first and foremost, that has to stop immediately. All right? External relationships are ended as of here and now. We have to agree to that, right? And another thing couples counselors often do is they say, we have to make an agreement that no decision will be made for at least, say, 6 months, right? Sometimes they want to go longer than that, depending on what the issues are. But I would think at a minimum, 6 months discussing issues and working on things before any sort of a major decision is allowed to be made. And by that, I'm thinking divorce, or if we're going to separate, live apart, etc. 6 months. We stay and we work on it for 6 months at a minimum before we make any changes, right? Now, if the couple can live up to those ideas, those rules and regulations, they have a chance. But if they can't, that thing is probably going to split up sooner rather than later. And sometimes you wonder if that's the best thing. I've often heard children of, adult children even, of arguing parents saying, I wish they would have broke up. It was so hard being in that house with those people. I never wanted to go home. I was always hiding in my room because they were always arguing and bickering and etc. So if we can't agree to meet the regulations, no outside relationships, and no major decisions for 6 months, if we can't do that, chances are excellent we're going to have a problem. There's some more rules, by the way. We don't get off that easy. Another rule, and then this is no particular order after the first two, it's sort of like you can't go home and argue about this stuff, right? You can't do that. We have our sessions here. If you want to talk about particular issues, we will set an itinerary for that in this meeting, and you can take that home. Maybe you're going to have a date night on Thursday night. You're going to go out to dinner, and you're going to discuss a particular issue that we're going to identify now. Something like that to keep the thing contained so it doesn't explode, right? So we don't go back and start trying to have sessions in the home that we should be having here. That could be a rule. No arguing. Another one, agreement might be a truce. We agreed to get along, period. We simply are not going to fight. We are not going to argue. We're not going to do anything that's going to be hurtful to the other person, at least for those initial 6 months. I'm not saying you can hurt her afterwards. Don't get me wrong. But we turn off all animosity. There's a truce. It's a ceasefire. No throwing bombs at the other person. No disparaging remarks. No complaints. No emotional sorts of triggerings. Stay away from things you know is going to bother your partner, right? Agree to all this stuff. We know it's going to be hard, and we know that people are going to fail, but we're going to hold those as ideals, and we're going to work toward them so that we can Work through the underlying issues without all the smoke of the arguing and the resentment that is more toward the surface. We need to find out what's going on down at the bottom. Now, a lot of folks are afraid of that. I really get it. I've spoken to a lot of people over time who said they don't want to go into it. They don't want to wreck their marriage. They don't want to wreck their family, particularly ladies. And my heart goes out to ladies. I've been a feminist long before feminists. But the idea is that the women might know that their husband are seeing someone on the side, but they simply won't bring it up. They won't discuss it because they don't want to rock the boat and they don't want to destroy their families. So they ignore it and just move along, go sailing through life, sailing through the marriage without tipping the boat over, even though they know something's going on. A lot of ladies did that for a lot of time. Nowadays, not so much. Women are calling things like that out into the open as soon as they think they're happening. In fact, a lot of women have their fist up and they're ready to fight because they're expecting it to happen. They figure every man is cheating, and I'll leave that one alone. So the idea is, if we can talk about these things, we can sift through all the surface smoke and flame and get down to the core issues and do some work. And can that bring a couple closer together? Can it repair a marriage? Yes, it can. It really can, folks. Come on. I know people are afraid of it, but it does work. Go slowly. Don't try to dive into the deep end at the beginning. If you need some help, let someone sort of guide you in the process. We're just going to take these things off one at a time. That's how nations negotiate so they don't go to war with one another, is they just start looking at the issues and dealing with them one at a time until everything that's of concern has been addressed and alleviated. It can work, folks. And not only that, your relationship can get stronger, it can get closer, it can get better, it can get more loving. Truly. Don't be afraid of it. What's in Pandora's box? I often suspect it's rage at the bottom. Because why else would we need a box? What do we need to contain that is so powerful and so hurtful that it requires containment in a strong environment that won't let it explode? I think there's probably a lot of rage down there. What's in Pandora's box? You know, that's a question we each have to ask ourselves. What's in there? Let's bring it out into the light, expose it to the sunlight, and let's fix it. Otherwise, we'll be afraid of divorce, right? Not good. Thank you all for stopping by. I appreciate it. I look forward to talking with you next time. Go in peace.